Here comes the pulse point question of the week. Is increasing productivity logical if farmer is not provided with equivalent market linkage and low cost inputs? India's dairy growth journey shows a clear shift. Until the late 1970s, more milk came from more animals, not more production. Unsustainable due to scarce fodder and fragile supply. Operation Flood changed the game by building cooperatives that guaranteed procurement, delivering incentives for crossbreeding, feeding, and veterinary care. Since the 90s and especially post 2000, productivity per animal became the main growth driver. So much so that per capita milk availability now exceeds 400 grams per day, making milk a household staple. However, higher milk yields don't ensure better incomes unless cost and markets are managed. In areas with reliable cooperative or processor channels, farmers translate yield gains into stable income. But in informal markets, added production can depress prices, so gains are lost. The success of a proposed white revolution too hinges on expanding organized markets and making productivity gains profitable at the farm level. The Delhi Milk Scheme DMS marked a significant milestone with the digital launch and unveiling of the cow milk and co-branded dairy products, a step forward in strengthening dairy quality, enhancing consumer trust, and empowering livestock farmers. As part of the initiative, 22 new booth allotment letters were handed over to selected applicants under the DMS, creating new employment opportunities and strengthening the rural-urban dairy connect. In her keynote address, Shrimati Alka Upadhyay, Secretary DAHD, shared the vision for reinforcing the dairy ecosystem through improved product offerings and inclusive opportunities for stakeholders across the value chain. Further, Secretary DAHD lauded the efforts of DMS and Haryana Milk Federation for launching of their new products in the market. Shrimati Varsha Joshi, Additional Secretary DAHD, highlighted the importance of DMS brand of milk and dairy products for Delhi NCR and advancement of DMS now with the introduction of new products in the market. The government this week informed Parliament that penalties worth Rs 36.72 crore were imposed in 8,815 cases related to fake and adulterated milk during FY25, marking an increase from the previous financial years. In FY25, special drives were conducted ahead of major festivals in September before Diwali and in February before Holi, when demand for dairy products typically surges. The minister said that 33,405 milk samples were analyzed during the year, leading to 12,057 cases being launched. Of these, conviction and penalty were imposed in 8,815 cases, resulting in Rs 36.72 crore fine. The penalty amount shows a steady upward trend over the past 3 years. In FY24, penalties worth Rs 34.83 crore were imposed, while in FY23, the figure stood at Rs 24.30 crores. The government think tank Niti Aayog withdrew its controversial working paper titled Promoting India-US Agricultural Trade under the new US trade regime that advocated for importing genetically modified soybean and corn from the US, signaling India's firm stance against allowing GM food imports due to biosafety concern. Despite arguments within the paper that such imports could help meet India's biofuel targets and not harm domestic production, the paper was removed amid strong backlash from the farmer groups and policy sensitivities. India currently allows commercial cultivation only of GM cotton, a non-food crop, and maintains strict regulations against GM food imports. The withdrawal aligns with the government position and opposition from groups like the RSS-affiliated Swadeshi Jagran Manch, reflecting India's cautious approach towards transgenic food in trade negotiations with the US. In November 2019, India made a last-minute decision to walk away from RCEP, the biggest trade pact it had ever negotiated. The turning point was not just policy rethink in Delhi, but the voices of thousands of women farmers from Gujarat's dairy cooperatives. They sent handwritten letters to South Bloc, warning how the deal would devastate agriculture and their fragile livelihoods. These letters, simply yet powerful, captured the fears of cheap imports, especially from China, flooding Indian markets and crippling agri, dairy, and steel. Their collective cry became impossible to ignore. Weeks later, India pulled out. Today, history seems to echo as India faces tough US trade talks. Once again, dairy, agri, and GM crops stand as non negotiable red lines, proof that farmer voices, especially those of women, can shape the nation's biggest trade decisions. A new scoping review, highlighted by Eating Well from a Nature study, mapped 281 associations between dairy intake and adult health outcomes across 5 domains: cardiovascular disease or CVD, cancers, body weight, mortality, and others, including type 2 diabetes, bone, joint, and cognitive health. Findings showed overall dairy consumption often linked to reduced risk of heart disease, several cancers, including bladder, breast, colorectal, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. Yogurt and fermented dairy showed the strongest benefits. 25 studies linked them to lower risk of CVD, T2D, and cancers, with no increased risk reported. Cheese also showed protective effects for CVD and some cancers, though many studies were neutral. Across 27 studies, both full-fat and low-fat dairy correlated with better heart health. Only a small subset linked dairy to higher risk for specific cancers, underscoring evidence variability.
Kiss me, close your eyes and miss me. I can read your lips on your fingertips. Happiness in your eyes. Kiss me, close your eyes and miss me. Kiss me, close your eyes and miss me.
Cadbury Silk. How far will you go for love?